where are we with the Course in Miracles? We're with this last two sections in part 2. What is a miracle and who am I? And those last 2 sections are these lessons that are special. They're really deep. They're really special. All of the lessons up to this point have been 10 syllables, and now they're 20, and soon they'll be 30, and then there's one that's 40. So they kind of build energy, these last 20 lessons. And I think we need to pay much more attention than we have been before. Like today's lesson, I let forgiveness rest upon all things, for thus forgiveness will be given me. And then it says right off the bat, God has given us the means to escape from our hell, right? I was looking at that because Sandra and I did the podcast this morning, and then I had to give this talk on the Course in Miracles to the LRT people. And I'm thinking in terms of, okay, where do I stand with that? And a lot of the people in the LRT had not been students of the Course. So what can I say to them that's going to inspire them to pick it up and start working with it? So that was kind of what was going through my mind. And then I was thinking about this thing about forgiveness being the means to liberate us from the hell that we made up. I mean, certainly that's true. And as students, longtime students of A Course in Miracles, we realize that. We see that, forgiveness is the work we do. Forgiveness is this key to happiness. It's this process we go through, and it's the means. It's basically the means that God has given us to clean up our act, so to speak. But then we also see that the way we thought forgiveness isn't exactly the way it goes. Like forgiveness is the recognition that what you thought your brother did to you didn't even occur. When the first time we read that, it must have shocked us a little bit, right? Well, so we get out of blame, we get out of our self-righteousness where we think, we're so good and we can let those bad people off the hook. That is totally not what forgiveness is, and that's the ego's version. So we get corrected on many levels, and then when the actual work has to take place and we have to embrace forgiveness as the key to happiness, we see, wow, there's so much unwillingness in us to take responsibility that this is not a course for the faint of heart, right? This is not a course for the faint of heart. And then, okay, so we see it enough. We're serious enough students that we see it and we stick with it. And then we see, wow, the whole system of forgiveness is all internal, and it's all about cleansing the impurities that are in me. So these realizations, I think we've all had as over the years as students of the Course in Miracles, but for new people who've never heard of the Course, this is a quantum leap. And how do we talk about the Course to people that have never heard about it and present it in a responsible way, but also present it in an inspiring way that we can get them interested? So this was my challenge today, because out of, about 15 people, that were there, I would say maybe only 3 or 4 had heard of the Course and were working with it. So today, I started by saying the Course in Miracles is the paradigm of joy. It's trying to get us to the paradigm of joy, or it's trying to get us into a heavenly state. But by the same token, we have to face the hell we're in order to get there, and that's the means it uses. It's I don't know if you've noticed, but some of those passages about the ego, like, sending out its messengers to bring back, bloody, screaming things, that it feeds upon. I don't know if you've noticed, but the language it uses to describe the ego, it's like, it's not easy to see it that way. It's not easy because it shows us the depth of the attack, the depth of the hell we made up, the depth of the transgression that we've done to ourselves. And that's something people don't really want to look at. So like the step into heaven can't start until you see the hell you made up, right? So that's the part we don't want to see. We pretend everything's okay, or we have our little substitutes for love that are very gratifying, and we get preoccupied with that, and then we never really look at this hell we made up. And much in the same way that Sandra was talking yesterday about the death urge, the unconscious death urge, we never really look at that. We never really see that it's we who are killing ourselves, right? We just think, oh, it's just something out there that happens. So part of this forgiveness process is to look kind of dispassionately at the status quo of where our minds are. And part of this status quo is the hell that we have constructed. And then we give it all kinds of glitter. We give it all kinds of, this and that to make it look different. But it's still when push comes to shove, and at the end of the day, we feel lonely, we feel separated, we feel isolated, we feel all these things that the hell we've made up gives us. And that we have to look at. Major part of the LRT is getting people to look at these family patterns and ways that we sabotage ourselves, the personal lie, the way our families operated, all the jealousies and competitions we have with siblings and people and etc. And so we look at some of these things first. Usually that's yesterday, right? That's during the LRT, looking at the family patterns and so forth, looking at anger, why people are so attached to anger. They think that they're safe with anger. They don't want to give it up. They have a fear of giving it up. So looking at all those things, I don't think we could do that at the depth that we do that without having been students of the Course in Miracles. Because one thing the Course does is it lays the ego out. God bless Dr. Schuchman. She was a psychologist and she studied how the mind deceives itself. And so she had all that language. And when she and Jesus got together, she just laid it out, He even told her, look, I need your background as a psychologist. I need your background with this language. Because she was telling him, go and find a nun. And he was saying, oh, no, they would be too much in rapture. They would be too much emotional. And that's not the language I need. I need your language that because the problems of this age are psychological problems. And so this is a mind training, and we have to deal with these things in a responsible psychological way. So this is the language of the Course, and more or less, it's for the working person who's somewhat educated. I don't know. We all probably here have college educations. It probably could go out to the masses, but I'm not sure. It's mostly for educated people, people that have that language. because some of the language, it's very deep, especially in the text. So most of the people we're reaching and most of the people in our sphere of influence are educated people and somewhat influential people, that have responsible jobs, lives, all of that, all that. But still, we have to look at what are the subtleties of the hell we made up? And are we willing to look at them and let go of them? And where are we holding non-forgiveness? I think that was the theme this morning that Sandra and I were looking at. Where are we not forgiving? Because this says, okay, forgiveness, I let forgiveness rest on all things, and thus forgiveness will be given me. Now, it says all things. That's like every atom in the cosmos, right? It doesn't say some things, some people, a few people, these people over here, but not the ones over there. No, it says all things, all people, all atoms of creation, all planets in the universe, all star systems, all, you name it, all things, all things. And that's where the forgiveness has to go out to. So if we divide that and we think that we're the ones that decides where the forgiveness is merited, right? Oh, so-and-so merits my forgiveness, but so-and-so over there doesn't, then it's like our ego back in there. And then the forgiveness isn't coming back to us because we haven't extended it completely. If we want to be absolved of everything in our past, and this is like past lives too. This isn't just the stuff we did in this life. It's the stuff in our subconscious from 1,000 past lives we maybe not even aware of, right? And we want to be absolved of all that too, because, knowing what we know from rebirthing and the work we do, the internal work, we know the subconscious can throw out something that we don't even know we have. And that could be from 20 lifetimes ago. So we want to be absolved of all that. So how do we do it? We have to forgive everybody and everything completely, and no exceptions. And in order to do that, we kind of have to admit we don't know what the hell we're doing, Like that's what the Course starts out saying. Nothing I see means anything. Why did the Course start with those lessons? Nothing I see means anything. My thoughts don't mean anything. I don't understand anything I see. That's like number 3, Then 4, my thoughts don't mean anything. These thoughts don't mean anything. I'm not upset for the reason I think. I'm seeing the past. I don't even see anything as it is right now because I'm seeing it through the filter of my past. So it starts right there, exactly right there, telling you don't know what you're doing. And you better admit it. Because we can't go any farther until you admit you don't know what you're doing. You see what I mean? So the forgiveness has to rest on everything, and you don't even have to understand all that it's resting upon. You don't even have to understand the stuff you have to forgive. In fact, you probably won't even know. I had this teacher, Haleakala, for Ho'oponopono. He was really excellent. And he was saying, the one thing that most people don't know is that they don't know. They don't know they don't know. They think they know everything. And that's a problem. Because that's where you're stuck. That's where you're holding all your grievances, your judgments, your attack thoughts, your sorrow, your own personal sorrow, your own things that you contribute to the collective sorrow. In the known is where you're holding all that. You're projecting all that. And now, okay, the Course starts out, it says, All that stuff you think you know doesn't mean anything. Now, who can really drop it? That's the question. Who can really drop it? Because it says that, unequivocally it says that. What you think you know doesn't mean anything, and you have to drop it. And that's part of the process of forgiveness, is letting it go, right? But Tara Singh said, inherent in the very thought system that you have to drop is the unwillingness to drop it. So what are you going to do with that? Unwillingness, he said. That's where we're stuck. We could be shown by Jesus how to walk through the door to heaven, and our ego is so unwilling to drop the crap, we would choose the hell over the heaven because our unwillingness is so strong. And I think this is what Sandra was also intimating about the death urge. You know, we are so attached to the belief that death's inevitable, our personal lie, and we're convinced we're separate from spirit and that our true self is this personality we made up, right? That's in a body. We think that's our self. So those three things, the separation, belief death's inevitable, and our personal lie, and those are going to kill us. And even when we're told that, we still are attached to all those things. So, forgiveness is the key to happiness, but forgiveness is not for the faint of heart. So that's where we are. I let forgiveness rest upon all things. That was today. Who can do it? Who can do it? You'd almost have to be Jesus in order to be able to do it. Now, we all do have the Christ potential. You know, at least he clears that up. He says, don't put me on a pedestal. I'm your brother, but I'm your older brother who's played his part perfectly, but you have the same potential I have, and the same Christ self is in you that's in me. The only difference is I don't have anything else in me. I just have that. And you've got some other stuff we got to get rid of, right? So I'm here to help you get rid of it, but you've got to follow me in that process. Yes, I'm among the ministers of God that Mark wanted to point out to me in the beginning, but I said, yes, but am I stepping back and letting him lead the way? You know, that's the kicker. You know, lesson 154, right after you say I'm defenseless, right? You say, well, I'm among the ministers of God because I'm so defenseless. But then you have to say, well, I'll step back and let him lead the way, meaning the Christ. And who among us can step back? We want to think we know what we're doing and figure out the next thing, right? Rather than say, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I had this one instance where Tara Singh very seldomly used the word love. Very seldom. In fact, he'd never sign a letter saying love, Tara Singh, you know, never do that. And I kind of wondered, you know, about it once. And then he said something about, he just came right out and said, you know, I don't know what love is. But then he said, but I don't have to know because he knows. But I don't have to know because he knows, meaning he had stepped back and let the Christ lead the way. So he didn't have to know what love was because the Christ was leading him, and he had total trust that the Christ would lead him the right way to love. So he didn't have to know what it was. And I thought that was not only humble, but it was super wise. I mean, he totally undid our sentimentality, you know, because sometimes in moment of sentimentality when want to say, oh, I love you, et cetera, you know. But then he would say, well, yeah, you got married to your wife and you said you loved her, and then 20 years later you hated her and divorced her. So was that love the love, real love, if it changed to its opposite? You know, he'd just confront you like crazy on stuff like that. Yeah, I think it's important to admit we don't know. And Krishnamurti wrote this book. I'm not sure he actually wrote it, but his people around him put it together. And the title was Freedom from the Known. I suggest you all get that. He was saying how the limitations of the known are what keep us preoccupied with the problems of humankind, our personal problems and our larger problems. You know, the known, within that field of the known, we've put together all those things in our psyche and in our governments and in our families that produce problems. It's inherent. It's inherent. And basically he's saying inherent to thought is conflict. It's just inherent because it's a dualistic system and it's always comparing and it's always attacking something and measuring and assessing and judging. And he says inherent in the known is the very problem that you're trying to use the known to overcome. But the answers aren't there. And that's what governments are formed on, you know. Oh, if we have the right policy, the right this, we pass the right laws, oh, everything's going to be cleared up. But then you realize, well, you know, you pass one law that might solve one little part of something, and then it creates 3 or 4 more problems over here. So that whole process doesn't free us. And plus, we're looking for something external. If we change something in the external to clear something up in the external, we don't ever get to the source of what made the problem up in the first place, which is a totally internal matter. So the people in the governments aren't looking at it in those terms. They're not looking at it as in terms of what is in us that has made this problem, and that's the part we have to handle. They don't look at it that way. They look at it as an external problem with an external solution. And now the Course is coming and saying, there are no external problems. There are only internal problems that you've projected. So that's a huge shift. That's a huge shift. And I think we've all kind of seen that in our own evolution, right? And that's why we're seriously here studying this Course in Miracles, because it's consistent. We're consistent with it. And I think that reaching this point where, and I don't want to say we're quote unquote serious students and other people aren't, but there are some thresholds that we've crossed into that we will never go back to seeing it in another way. You know, it's like once you take that inner responsibility, you can never go back into victim consciousness and blaming something outside yourself. I mean, what did you do when you read that part in the text? I think it was called The Responsibility for Sight. And it says something like, everything that I feel and I see, I've decided how I want to feel it and see it before it even happened to me. And I'm responsible for everything that happens to me. I mean, what did you think when you read that? I mean, my goodness, like that's enlightenment in like one paragraph, right? And Jesus hits you with it all at once. He just like says it so clearly, boom, and there it is. And if you read it, you can't ever forget you read it, because it's so transformational. You can't go back and think it the other way. And now that's a miracle. And that's why it's called A Course in Miracles. There are certain thought processes that it gets you to look at. And once you look at them, you can't ever go back to thinking the other way. It's just not possible. Well, you could fight it. I guess you could say, well, the Course in Miracles is BS, and yeah, there are victims in the world, and I'm not responsible for everything that happens to me. You could do that, but then you'd have to sort of not be a student of the Course. You'd have to put the whole thing on the shelf. You couldn't just partially do the Course after that. And that's the challenge, but it's also the beauty of the Course in Miracles. It corners our mind, and our mind can't get away. In the talk I gave today, I really got clear on this thing about heaven and hell, and how we have chosen hell, and how we're in a hell, right? I really got clear on that today. And I think I cornered people enough that they saw that they were making up their own hell. And basically that's what that passage in the text is saying. Like, whatever happens to you and you don't like it and it's painful, you asked for it. So part of your mind has certain beliefs, which are just thoughts you keep thinking, right? So if you think, oh, well, I'm bad, well, you're going to get people to punish you because you're bad. So you're going to make a hell to prove that you're bad. Things like that. That's the work we do with the personal lie. But we have all kinds of little subtle thoughts like that about life, about ourselves, about other people. They're like negative, judgments that we think are final and they can't be changed. And then they produce these results that our subconscious has asked for. And then we wonder why our life looks like hell in certain areas. It's like we already asked for it. We already, maintained those thoughts that attracted it. So seeing that, I think clearly, I think Sandra's lecture yesterday when she said death is an addiction, wow, oh my goodness, I never heard her say it like that. Death is an addiction. And then it was really funny how she was saying, well, do you really want to end up in an old folks home? And, then you're going to be miserable. You're going to be the waiting for death syndrome. And then I'm tired of life syndrome. And it was just hilarious hearing her talk about it. And then, you see, oh yeah, people do that. And yes, I want to choose out of that. I don't want to do that. But then there's all these other underlying beliefs that we have to handle. And fortunately, the Course in Miracles helps us handle it. And this thing about forgiveness, letting it rest upon all things, for then it'll be given me. It's like all that crap you don't even know you have is going to get cleaned up if you're willing to forgive everybody and everything. That's just what the lesson is saying. If I can forgive everybody and everything, then I don't have to worry about, well, there might be some things that I forgot about that I didn't ask to be forgiven for. Haleakala, my Ho'oponopono teacher, said, thank goodness we don't have to know all the things we need to clean. We just do the cleaning or the forgiving process, let's say. They called it cleaning in Ho'oponopono. Let's do that work of the cleaning, the forgiveness work. And then we don't even have to know all the things that we have to ask for forgiveness. We don't even have to know all that at all. It's in the subconscious. We're just cleaning it as in mass, so to speak, as a whole. We're cleaning it as a whole. And we don't have to see all the particulars. just like it says in lesson 79 and 80, let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. Then it says, let me recognize the problem has been solved. And what's the problem? It's your imagined separation from your source. That's the only one problem. So if you can solve that one, all the other problems get solved. Well, it's kind of like, okay, if you let forgiveness rest on all things and you're not going to decide where it's supposed to go, you're just saying it's going to go on everything because I don't even know how I've screwed up half the stuff in my life. But I'm going to let forgiveness rest upon it. Well, then, okay, you're free. Problem solved. You've connected. You've connected with the Holy Spirit, and you're saying, okay, Holy Spirit, I don't know what I'm supposed to forgive, but you do. Just like Tara Singh said, well, I don't know what love is, but I don't have to know because he knows. The Holy Spirit knows, or Jesus knows. And the Holy Spirit knows what to forgive in my whole makeup, my whole history, my whole whatever it is. So I'm letting forgiveness rest upon all that. So it's kind of like a whole action. What we have to do with the Course is a whole action. It's not incremental, It's not incremental. Like when you first start the Course, it may look incremental, like in steps, right? Little bits at a time. It may look like that when you first start and you're studying it. But then at some point you see it's not incremental. It's like all or nothing, and the Course presents its language in those kind of all or nothing words, like it says, partial forgiveness doesn't mean anything. It just means you didn't forgive. And we had to look at that because when we give people sessions for the first time, one thing we ask them is their forgiveness scale, and we use a scale, and it is helpful for new people. We say on a scale of 1 to 10, or 0 to 10, 0 is no forgiveness, 10 is complete forgiveness. What do you get on your mother? What do you get on your father? And they come up with scores like 6, 7, 8, and if they're really mad, 3, 2, 1. So, and then sometimes they'll say 9. Well, 9 sounds pretty good, right? Like if I can forgive my mother to 9, I'm almost there. But there's a point in the Course where it says partial forgiveness has no meaning. So 9 is you flunked. You didn't do it. You didn't do it. Your unwillingness was still in operation. Therefore, you're not going to go all the way. You can't go through the doorway to heaven, which is what today's lesson was talking about. You cannot go through that doorway with only 9 points of forgiveness. That 1 point is going to keep you outside. What we eventually see as students of the Course, that it's a whole thing. It's kind of an all or nothing. I don't want to say black and white. It is sort of black and white. It's like you're either in or you're not. You're either in hell or you're in heaven. And then you have to see, well, I'm in hell. Even though I've made a kind of a nice hell, I've made my hell really nice. I like my hell. I made a nice hell. It's got like a swimming pool in it, I got a nice hell. And then you see, wow, it's still hell. Wow, it's still hell. Takes a little bit to wake up to that. And that's where the faint of heart can't go.